Ecology is the study of interactions between living things with one another and their environment. And when you talk about ecology, it's important to understand what an organism's niche is. And a niche is an organism's role in its environment. And generally, that's going to refer to how it obtains its resources. So things like food, water, shelter, so what it eats, how it eats, and things like that. There are a couple of different types of interactions between different organisms. The first is what we call a symbiosis, and these are close relationships between organisms that are living together. And there are three types of symbiosis. The first is parasitism, and that's when one benefits and the other is harmed. So if you wanted to represent that by using symbols, the one that benefits would get a plus, and the one that is harmed would get a negative sign or a minus sign. Mutualism is when both organisms benefit, so that would be a plus plus. And commensalism is when one organism will benefit and the other is unaffected. So you would use it with a plus and a 0 to represent neutral. Competition is another type of interaction between organisms, and this is between organisms that occupy the same niche. So what that means is that they live in the same habitat, which has limited resources. And even though that there are limited resources, those organisms have similar needs, meaning they need the same habitat or they require the same food type. So they're going to compete with each other. And the last type of interaction is predation. And that's when one organism will actively hunt and kill another for food. And this can be a good thing because it keeps populations in check, and it will also help with eliminating weaker members of a species. And also it's important to recognize that predators and prey, their population sizes will change as the other one changes. So as one goes up, the other may also go up or go down. Energy flow is referring to how energy moves through a food chain. All energy in an ecosystem or in a food chain starts with the sun. There are two types of organisms: autotrophs, also known as producers, that can use the sunlight to create their own food. Heterotrophs, or consumers, cannot do that. They have to eat another organism. And there are a couple different types of heterotrophs. The first is a herbivore, which eats only plants. A carnivore will eat only animals. An omnivore can eat both, or eats both. A scavenger will only eat dead animals. And a decomposer will feed off of dead and decaying organisms. So an example of a decomposer would be a fungus. The first difference that we need to be familiar with is a food chain and a food web. A food chain is a linear flow of energy through different trophic levels. And that word there, trophic levels, refers to one step in the food chain or an energy pyramid. So it's each energy level. That's different from a food web, which is a bunch of connected food chains, and you can see many feeding relationships. And with the energy pyramids, this is a way to show the amount of energy moving from one trophic level to the next, so one energy level to the next. And when you look at an energy pyramid, which is, here's an example down here, there's an important rule that you need to be familiar with, the 10% rule. And that says that only 10% of the energy is going to pass to the next trophic level. So when you start down here, only 10% will move up each level, and 90% is lost either as heat or it's actually used up by the organisms in that level. And biomass is the total amount of living material in an area. When you look at an energy pyramid, there are a couple of things or terms you need to be familiar with. The first is producers, and then everything above the producer is what we call a consumer. But depending on how high up they are, they might be a primary, a secondary, or a tertiary consumer. And all of these organisms, when they die, will be decomposed by a decomposer.